Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Nader narrative on Jersey First TV. This is a second on a series of a very important topic. And it's something that immediately you may or may not say, whoa, that affects me. But I want you to understand by the time we're done talking that it affects everyone. Because even if you're not an independent contractor or you don't hire independent contractors, you are a consumer who pays prices and who has to deal with the results of bad economic decisions from Washington and also our state governments that ultimately end up showing up in the prices that you pay. But this, what we're going to talk about today, really affects the structure of America. My feeling is, as an individual who believes in capitalism and how the American economy works so well with small businesses, is that our ability to give people flexibility, especially women, working women, flexibility to sort of create the kind of working life that they want. And it's not just women, but especially women, and be flexible and be able to work for different companies or create a small business that hires people when they need them. That's what the gig economy is. That's what we mean when we talk about 1099 workers. So what's the problem? Well, if you didn't watch the first episode, you're going to watch this one and understand that within a few days, this literally could disappear from our structure as an American economy. It could be no longer an option for you to be able to create the kind of economic lifestyle that you want with the kind of work that you want to do. This is what is at risk. And so I want to bring onto the show, I'm so excited to have her here, Patrice Onwuka. Thank you for Onwuka. See, I told you I would do it wrong. Onwuka, thank you for being here. I've been excited to talk to you because you are leading this fight. You are director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at the Independent Women's Forum, as well as co-hosting a morning show on WMAL FM. A lot of different things that you've done to be an advocate, but let's tell the people what's going on in Washington and what is at risk.
Sure. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me. Listen, flexible work, self-employment, small businesses, they are at risk right now. In a matter of 1 week, the Biden Department of Labor will be implementing new regulations that will make it difficult to be an independent contractor. That means you're earning 1099 work. You're not W-2 employee, you're your own boss, or maybe you have a side hustle. You could be a gig worker. You could be a contractor with decades of experience, a professional who certainly works for himself or herself. And frankly, we have an administration that believes that only employees, W-2 employees, are the right way for everyone, regardless of whether your personal situation is right to work in a traditional setting. So we are up against a serious threat to what you rightly said is about what underscores opportunity and freedom in America and the workforce and the economy, and that's small business, and that is that entrepreneurial spirit.
You know, the backbone of our economy. It is true. If you don't own a small business, you probably work for a small business. You're affected by small businesses. It is really the strength of our economy. I personally am affected by this, both on the side of being someone who runs a small business and as well somebody who works for other people in this 1099 environment. That flexibility, I think we've all taken for granted. And all of a sudden now, Patrice, what's really interesting is that this is a rule coming down from a governmental body of unelected officials who have decided to put this in place. Let's start with that, because this is a fundamental change to our economy from people who we didn't elect. Isn't this an issue in itself?
Well, it is, and it may very well be an example of government overreach. Another example of the administrative state run amok. And so this is what happens when people who, you rightly so, as you said, are not beholden to the democratic process and to constituents or citizens. They are beholden to themselves. And so they come up with these rules and these ideas to drive them down to the workforce in a way that's meant to micromanage everything that we do, because there's a philosophy that somehow there's smart technocrats somewhere smart enough to run the economy better than the free market system and the invisible hand that guides it. That's just choices that individuals get to make every day. So that's what we're up against. This has been a little bit of a ping pong ball, Elizabeth. One administration to another is really trying to control what workers are classified as, whether you're a W-2 employee or an independent contractor. We saw the Obama administration try to do some regulations, not as far as Biden has gone. The Trump administration said, hey, we're going to pull the reins back and really make this a more independent contractor friendly environment and bring some consistency and clarity to that question of employee versus independent contractor. The Biden administration is saying, nope, we're scrapping that simple rule and we're going to replace it with our own, which is much more complex. It's going to introduce a lot more opaqueness and uncertainty. And the people who are going to get to determine whether you as a small business owner who've hired independent contractors or you as an independent contractor get to retain your status is going to be some bureaucrat, frankly. So we are fighting back against this, but it's an uphill battle.
Well, let's go through some examples so people can really understand who are listening. Again, they may be small business owners, they may be gig workers themselves, or they may just need to understand this to advocate as a consumer who wants flexibility and an ability to do business with any number of small businesses. So let's take this from the standpoint of the small business itself. So you create a small business, and as you go, you may, let's say you are a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
We used this example before because I think it's really something people can understand. And you create this small business, you create an LLC, and you get hired to do weddings. And as your business grows, once in a while, you get maybe double booked on a weekend, or you need help, or it's a bigger wedding. So you want to reach out and hire another photographer for that event. And that photographer would work for you on a 1099 basis. And under Trump's rules right now, and most of the states, not California, we'll get to that. It's a simple definition of whether or not you control that individual's workload and scheduling. And you really don't, because you're asking them to come in for one event or perhaps every now and then. So right now that works. Under the Biden rules that are coming out of the Department of Labor, it is likely, once you make it through the pages and pages and pages and pages of rules, that you, small business owner, would have to hire that individual as an employee. Patrice, explain what that means to a small business owner.
Well, it can be crushing because you're talking about upwards of 30% increase in payroll and labor costs. Right. Now, just most basically, the difference between an employee and an independent contractor is that an employee, if you hire one, you're responsible for all of the wage, hourly laws, federal and state, as well as the benefits that are attached. So you have to pay them overtime if they work overtime and hit that threshold. You have to pay for their unemployment benefits. You have to provide health care. Depending on your state, there may be regulations around paid time off. And so all of that those benefits accrue to employees. Independent contractors don't get that. You, as an employer and the independent contractor, you negotiate whatever the contract is, the terms of the contract, how long it is, and what the pay is. But that independent contractor works for themselves, as you rightly said. They control the time, the location, everything around this project-based idea. So if you have to now hire that independent contractor as an employee, now you're paying the payroll costs are going up. There's going to be reporting requirements. So compliance costs are going to be increasing. And we've seen some really interesting data from different organizations like the American Action Forum. I believe they quantified that nationally, similar regulations that would have been passed by Congress through the PRO Act, it would have increased labor costs for businesses in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, imagine, and that's going to be borne on the backs of small businesses. Right. It's hard enough already with rising labor costs, rising costs for inputs of goods, rising transportation and shipping costs, to now hire people that you don't necessarily have all of the full-time work to support.
Correct.
And so that's why I think we're going to see not just the law independent contractors lose contracts, lose opportunities, but small businesses really be crushed by this because they would not be able to afford to get the work done that they have, and they don't have enough work to sustain a full-time or full employee workforce.
It's like you can't grow. And not only that, you're an expert in what you do. And in our example, as a wedding photographer or videographer, you're an expert in what you do. Suddenly, you need to become an expert in a lot of ways in all these regulations. And yes, I am sure that there will be businesses that sprout up that add this on to their payroll services. But, if you're listening right now and you're thinking about starting a small business or you own one, do you really want to have to go figure that out? Do you want to
Yeah.
hire a payroll service, have to figure out all of that, get workers' comp insurance? I mean, it sort of doesn't end, Patrice. It creates this other barrier to us being able to what in the past has been the American economy. You want to start a small business, you've got a great idea, start it in your garage, do whatever you have to do, because that's what we do as Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Now suddenly it's, wow, I've got to think about all these other things. So therefore it's going to stifle creativity. Yes. Don't you think?
It will. We have a storytelling series called Chasing Work, where we interviewed people who would be affected by regulations like this. And one of them was a small business owner. She was a florist, to your example, and she had an wedding planning business. And she said, I hire moms who are like me. She battled cancer 3 different times and was raising a family only because she was an independent contractor and had that flexibility. And she hired other women from a project-based standpoint. And that's how she sustained her business and sustained her familyhood, her livelihood and her family, and gave other women those very same opportunities. And so you're going to see these small mom and pop shops start to fold up. Elizabeth, many of them survived COVID-19.
Yeah.
They survived the draconian lockdowns. Now the government is back around again with these new restrictions that are going to be really hard for them to overcome, to be able to stay in business.
Is there a hope, Patrice, that we will have a court battle over whether or not an administrative body like the Department of Labor has the right to set a rule like that? Is there going to be a legal challenge to this?
Yes, there are 2 currently pending. So the freelancers USA, I believe, or Freelancers Against AB5, one of those freelance groups, they have lodged a federal challenge. Again, that's going to take time, and they did not seek an injunction, meaning they didn't seek for the rule to be halted based on while the case gets adjudicated. Secondly, I believe that there's a trucking association that's also launched another challenge as well. And again, there's no injunction. There was no ask for an injunction. So there's still opportunities for other groups and individuals to partner with organizations. There are some great legal organizations and defense funds that are looking for potential plaintiffs. Happy to make some connections if your listeners know or want to learn more. But there are cases working through the federal system. That said, March 11th is implementation day, and that's coming up. And so we may not see a successful challenge stop it right now, but there are those cases. And frankly, I think to your question of government overreach, there are also a lot of other pending Supreme Court cases getting at this growth of the administrative state and overreach that may have some implications on this rule.
Now, the negative impact, I should say, of this rule is not theory. We already know that something similar was passed in California. In fact, there's a connection with the Department of Labor woman who put this rule together, right, in California. So California already passed this draconian rule. We've already seen the impact. Patrice, talk about what it did to small businesses and gig workers in California.
So California in 2019 passed AB5, Assembly Bill 5, which implemented new restrictions on who could be an independent contractor. They call it an ABC test. And that one of those prongs being like that control over your time and your work, that being the most difficult one. Now, just to get into politics just a little bit, AB5 was passed by a democratically controlled legislature and signed by Governor Gavin Newsom.
Right.
And there were lots. It was very much driven by the unions, number one, because independent contractors cannot be unionized. So the
Right.
way to get more workers unionized is to convert them from independent contractors into W-2 employees. So the unions drove that bill, and it was implemented in 2020. Immediately, people from cosmetologists to eye professionals lost their contacts, lost their businesses, lost their livelihoods. We had mall Santas, entertainers, writers, people. Hundreds of different occupations have been impacted. Dog walkers, tutors. I mean, anything that you can think of. Someone starting a business on their own time. Those are people that were affected and lost their opportunities. We found recently from the Mercatus Center at George Mason, they quantified the impact. Self-employment fell 10.5% after AB5 in California was implemented. And the employment for just for people for overall employment fell 4.4%, and then self-employment fell 10.5%. So you are talking about potentially millions of people in the state of California who left, who lost everything that they had, who lost those flexible working opportunities that they really, really depended on.
Wow, it's tremendously depressing when you hear those numbers in such a short period of time. And like you say, a lot of these small businesses barely made it through COVID, and then comes this onslaught in California. Now we're facing it nationally, and it's imminent. It's imminent. It's next week. With that comes this crushing regulation, but also fines and all. It's all kind of things that, as a small business, is meant to almost scare you. I sometimes look at this and say, is this, is this a money grab? It's more taxes, it's more payroll taxes coming into the system. It sometimes makes me wonder what the impetus is. Is it the unions? Is it more than that? I mean, why do this? It's just against common sense.
There's a union element, certainly. There is this. I think there's a competing vision for how America should run and
Yeah.
who should run it. And I think there are some people who, at their core, really believe that the government is best positioned and best suited to control the economy and to determine who works, where they work, and how they work. And this philosophy believes that you being a worker, a cog in the machine, is the best thing for you. A union can negotiate your salary and your wages and your benefits, and a Washington bureaucrat can set the rates, can determine what overtime, who gets overtime, and who is working. And I think that there are many Americans who may think, okay, that's not a bad deal to make. I'm willing to make that Faustian bargain. But a lot of us don't.
No.
A lot of us believe that the sky is the limit. And if I want to be a W-2 employee, I can. If I want to have a side hustle and a small business on the side, I can. If I want to leave the workforce and have my own business, I can, and I should be able to.
Right.
And that is what we're fighting to protect, because it is the entrepreneurial spirit. Whether you are a gig worker driving an Uber, picking up deliveries for Uber Eats, or you are a professional with 30, 40 years of marketing experience who says, you know what, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to have my own clients. I want to be on the beach Monday through Friday and be tapping away at 4 a.m. on my projects and making just as much, if not more, than if I had a W-2 job. That's what we're fighting to protect, that belief that it is not government, but that the individual should be making those choices.
It's so important, and it's so in line with the spirit of who Americans really are. And even to those of you listening who are W-2 employees, that's fine. It's great. At a certain point in your life, many of us have been, but especially when it comes to women, I think there's this unique shift where when you have children, or at some point, maybe after the children leave the nest, so to speak, there's this shift from the W-2 mentality, or perhaps you took time off to be a full-time mother, and now you've got opportunities. It may be in network marketing. It may be something you've always wanted to try and start, or use the skills that you built in corporate America to now offer them on a 1099 part-time basis. And this idea, and it's true, and you know what, Patrice, I live this every day. I can work in the middle of the night if I want to. I can design what kind of we actually probably work more than W-2 right employees, right? But the point is, I can direct that. So I think, the reason I titled this Biden's War on Working Women is it seems that it affects them in a lot of ways more because of this very nature of how we change as individuals. I think as we reach even, middle age, however you define that, that we change and we want flexibility. We want to be able to craft our lives the way that makes sense for us and not think about a governmental body in Washington, D.C. telling us how to live our lives. So women are affected by this probably more than anyone.
Absolutely. So when you look at the 64 to 72 million people who freelance in this country, over half of them are women. And that has grown substantially, that percentage during the pandemic, because women take a whole shoulder greater burdens. I shouldn't call them burdens, home responsibilities,
Yeah.
household responsibilities.
Right.
And that's a great thing, whether that's making sure that your kids' education is staying on track. And, when your schools decide to shut down and go virtual, being able to be at home and ensure that their education continues, or whether you are taking care of an aging parent, sick spouse, have illnesses and diseases,
Right.
issues your own self. Women are more than just workers. They are caregivers, they are small business owners, and they have a lot of priorities that they're trying to juggle. Interesting fact, 92% of women prioritize flexibility over stability when it comes to their careers.
Yeah.
So we are flexibility maximizers, whereas men tend to be income maximizers.
Right.
And so it's not surprising that women are looking for these independent contracting positions or opportunities. Maybe you're a direct seller and you're selling products at home. There are so many ways that the market is creating these unique or income generating opportunities for us that the government is trying to clamp down on. And that absolutely hits squarely at a lot of women. And I'll just add, it also hits at older Americans, people who either feel like ageism is a challenge in the workforce and that they're able to continue to stay attached to the workforce by being their own boss, or
Yeah.
maybe they're trying to manage their own health conditions. And, you've got to schedule appointments throughout the day. That a typical boss is not going to be forgiving after a few appointments, in the middle of the day. But if you are your own boss, and like you said, you're working in early in the morning, late at night, then as long as you're getting the project done, you're taking care of all of your priorities. And so this independent contracting, protecting it, is so important for so many key demographics.
So important. And just to repeat, there are lawsuits, but no injunction, which means we're facing this for next week already. We know, of course, we have an election coming up, but no one knows the outcome of that. And, will that help reverse this? Perhaps we have to fight. So, I myself, I have to tell you, Patrice, I've got a lot of businesses left in me. I'm 54 and I've got at least, I don't know how many more I want to do.
Yes.
I can't imagine living in a country that's going to change like that. It really is just horrifying. So let's talk about what we can do, how we can fight back, give people the best advice.
Well, first off, while we wait for the court cases to run their track, we do have some congressional review acts that we are expecting to be launched very shortly. A congressional review act is simply one of the tools in Congress's tool belt to overcome some of those government overreach by these different agencies. And so it would literally be both the House and Senate voting to repeal this ruling from the Department of Labor, and then President Biden has already said he's going to veto it. So it's important that there be more than just a majority of Congress in both houses to overcome his veto. Now, as an Independent Women's Forum is a C3 organization, so we are only just telling you about what's going on in Congress. We do have a sister organization called Independent Women's Voice, which is actually getting folks activated. And so you can visit IWF to learn more about the issue, and then IWV.org to get activated on it. And then just tell people about the issue. It's so important that our friends, our family members, our kids, our teens and nieces and nephews, our grandparents, our parents, their friends know that this is happening and that this is coming down. Right now, a lot of articles, unfortunately, in the media are painting this as workers' rights. No, it is eliminating worker freedom. We need to fight for worker freedom. So sharing this message, getting it out there, and then when there's opportunities to make your voice heard with your elected officials, there'll be those opportunities as well to weigh in.
All right, great. Well, the fight continues no matter what happens next week, and it goes into effect. You know, it's just there's so many issues that people need to wake up about. It's
Yeah.
sort of hard, right? That there's so many things, but this is fundamental to everyone. I know my kids have a lot of entrepreneurial dreams, so I need to fight for this for their future as well. Thank you for doing what you're doing and all the organizations and your voice and your professionalism and your knowledge. I pray that a lot of us here in New Jersey will hear this and at least make a call to their congresspeople, at least to say, hey, I'm aware of this. This is not good. You know, this is overreach, and look for opportunities to join groups that may be doing more intense legal battles. Patrice, thank you so very much. We'll be
Thank you,
watching
Elizabeth.
this
Yes.
and pray that common sense prevails. I
Yes.
know that might be difficult, but we will continue to hope for that, right? As we
Yes.
claw back from some of this fundamental change to what America really is. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's my honor.
All right, guys. And to my audience, please call your congresspeople, talk about this, and we will see you next week.